Good morning. Thank you for coming to our withholding tax webinar here for tax year 2022. My name is Kelly Neeson, and I am the supervisor in our Tax Operations Bureau that handles the processing of sales and withholding tax returns. And today we're going to be focusing on withholding tax.
My name is Kim Searles, and I am the lead worker in the withholding unit.
Also, we do have some people answering questions. We have with us Jackie, Polly, and Mike. They will be available in answering your questions within the little chat box there. And for any technical issues you may be having, we have Jordan with us as well from our Customer Service Bureau. You can raise any questions you may have in that chat box at any time. We will do our best to answer them in a timely fashion. And then if we have some time at the end of the presentation, we will go over some of those questions that were asked throughout the webinar. And our contact information will be on the final slide of this presentation. We're going to review several topics about the Wisconsin withholding tax forms, which are the WT6 and WT7 forms. We'll go over how to file these forms, as well as how to file the W-2s and the 1099s that should be submitted along with the WT7 form. We'll review My Tax Account, our free online filing system, and give you some tips on how to avoid penalties and interest. Because above all, we do want to help you avoid that as much as possible. And we're going to briefly go over how to close an account and other resources that are available for you. First, let's go over the employer responsibilities. So employers are required to withhold if they pay wages to a Wisconsin resident, regardless where those services are performed. And this includes Wisconsin residents who telecommute. Pay for a non-resident for services performed in Wisconsin and the employer is engaged in business under Wisconsin law. For example, let's say you're an employer engaged in business here in Madison, Wisconsin. You hire 2 employees. One is a Wisconsin resident and the other is an out-of-state resident. Both employees are performing services in Madison, Wisconsin. So as the employer, you would be required to withhold taxes from their payroll and report that tax to the Wisconsin Department of Revenue. Wisconsin does have reciprocity agreements that could impact W-2 preparation. For more information on that topic, you want to visit our website and search for W-2 preparation guidance for more information. Third-party sick pay. This topic comes up frequently, usually at the end of a tax year when W-2s are being issued. Wisconsin does not follow the federal provisions relating to payments of sick pay made by third parties, such as insurance companies. The payer of the third-party sick pay who withholds the Wisconsin tax must be the same entity who issues a W-2 directly to the individual that received the sick pay. For example, an employer who pays wages to an individual and withholds Wisconsin income taxes from their paychecks must issue a W-2 to that employee and report that tax to the department. Now, if there's also a separate entity that issues the payer, a separate entity that's the payer of third-party sick plans who also withhold Wisconsin income taxes, they would also have to issue their own W-2 to that individual and report the tax to the department. Wisconsin statutes provide that when a third-party payer of sick pay makes payments directly to the employee, the third-party payer must report and remit the tax withheld, not the employer. For more information on that, you can view our Wisconsin withholding publication 166. Listed here are the common withholding returns. The WT6 is commonly used to submit withholding tax payments throughout the year. The WT6 is basically a payment voucher with return characteristics. The due dates of this return depend on your filing frequency, which we will go over in a few slides. The WT7 is our annual reconciliation of tax withheld throughout the year. It should also include any wage statements you issued. The due date for this return is January 31st of the following year. Unless that date lands on a weekend, then it would be due the very next business day.
Filing frequencies are set by state statute. Depending on how much tax you are reporting, your frequency may change. Each year, we conduct an annual scan and review the tax that each entity has remitted over the last 12-month period. These scans are run every November, so the 12-month look back ends on October 31st. If you ever need to verify the filing frequency of an entity, you can do so by going on our website at the link provided here and enter the necessary information of the entity. You will need the ID, meaning Wisconsin tax account number, the EIN or social security number, as well as the business's last name and zip code. As a side note, if you already have access to the entity through My Tax Account, you can easily view their frequency by logging in and looking. As I mentioned earlier, the filing frequencies are set by state statute and are determined by your annual liability that gets reported. Annual filers are only required to file a W-T7. They are not required to file a W-T6. Listed here is a breakdown of the different filing frequencies. As you can see, the more liability you report, the more frequently you will need to file. The due dates of the returns are due by the end of the following month. The only exception to this is for semi-monthly filers. Since those returns are due twice a month, the due dates are more frequent. For example, the filing period of January 1st through January 15th has a due date of January 31st. And the filing period of January 16th through January 31st has a due date of February 15th. So basically, the return is due by the end of the next filing period. If you have any questions, you can always contact us.
The Department of Revenue has had an e-filing mandate in place. This mandate is currently in place for all filers except those on an annual frequency. That being said, we do highly recommend that annual filers submit their returns electronically as well. Doing this helps decrease possible errors that come with paper filing, and it also helps quicken your processing time. The easiest way to abide by this mandate when filing a W-T6 return is to file your returns through one of these options listed. First, we have our online filing system called My Tax Account, otherwise referred to as MTA. Next, you have the option to submit your return through an approved XML software transmission. This is an option we offer employers so they can send an electronic funds transfer through our secure internet portal. And finally, we have our telefile option, which is a way to file your return using a touch-tone phone. This is an automated system that will go through the returns line by line and calculate the tax for you as you go. As I stated on the previous slide, the mandate to file electronically is in place for all filers except those on an annual filing frequency. At this time, we are still accepting paper W-T7 forms for annual filers, but again, we do highly recommend you file electronically to avoid any errors or delays. Similar to the W-T6 form, the W-T7 can be filed through MTA, XML submission, or telefile. When you file the W-T7, you must also submit copies of the W-2s and 1099s that were issued. This includes all W-2s reportable to Wisconsin, meaning all W-2s that have Wisconsin tax withheld. You also need to report any 1099s that have Wisconsin tax withheld. Now, you may have 1099s that you need to submit, but they don't have any Wisconsin withholding. These 1099s can be left off of the count on Form W-T7 since no Wisconsin tax is being reported. For example, if you have 5 1099s that you issued, but only 3 of them include Wisconsin withholding, then the number of 1099s you report on Form W-T7 would be 3. However, you would still submit copies of all 5 of the 1099s.
Here are a few W-T7 filing tips. These first 2 we just mentioned on the previous slide, but still wanted to include them on the list of tips. Indicate a count of all W-2s reportable to Wisconsin. Also indicate a count of all 1099s reportable to Wisconsin. 1099 miscellaneous and 1099 NEC should be reported online too. All other 1099s, such as the 1099-R, should be reported on line 3. Also, be sure to check your ACH information periodically if paying electronically. Often entities change banks and may not notify their preparer or payroll provider. As a result, the balance remains due and penalty and interest can be assessed, as well as return check fees in some cases. So it's a good idea to verify this information to prevent these payment errors from happening. Here's a sample of a W-2. Here's a sample of the 1099 miscellaneous form. Here's an example of the 1099 NEC form. When it comes to W-2s and 1099s, they can be submitted through XML, My Tax Account, or through our EFW2 upload page. Paper wage statements are accepted only if sending fewer than 10 W-2s or 1099s. This includes W-2Cs as well. For example, if you have 7 W-2s and 7 1099s, you can submit them by paper because you have less than 10 W-2s and less than 10 1099s. However, we still highly recommend that you file them electronically, as this would be a faster way to get them processed and cause less issues such as illegible copies or torn paper that causes a section to be missing. Annual W-7 returns and all wage statements are due by January 31st of the following year. Again, if this day falls on a weekend, they would be due the next business day. This is an important factor to consider because even though the deadline to file is January 31st, you can still submit the return at any time. You do not have to wait until the last possible day to file. In fact, we highly recommend you file as soon as possible to assure your information is properly received and processed.
The IRS has changed requirements regarding a 1099-K and when it must be issued. As of tax year 2022, the reporting threshold associated with Form 1099-K was drastically reduced to $600 in total payments with no minimum transactions. Prior to tax year 2022, the requirement was for $20,000 in total payments and 200 transactions. Wisconsin accepts 1099-Ks through our EFW2 process. You can review IRS publication 1220 for instruction on the formatting. We will also accept 1099-Ks through our XML submission. You can find a list of our approved XML vendors on our website. Here's a few filing tips when it comes to submitting your information returns. A $10 penalty may be assessed regarding W-2 and 1099 submissions. If the W-2s or 1099s are not submitted, a $10 missing wage penalty will be assessed. This penalty can also be assessed for wage statements filed late or by paper that total 10 or more. To give you an example of all this, let's say a business files a W-7 on a timely basis and they report 10 W-2s. If they file the return on My Tax Account and manually key in those 10 W-2s, there's no penalty assessed because the W-2s were submitted electronically with the return through My Tax Account. Now, if the return's filed timely, but they do not submit the W-2s, a $10 penalty will be assessed for each W-2, adding up to a $100 penalty. And if they file the return timely, but don't submit the W-2s until after January 31st, they can still be assessed that $100 penalty because they were filed late. And if they file the return timely and send the W-2s in by paper, they will still be assessed that $100 penalty because you can only submit W-2s by paper if you have less than 10. Now also, income tax refunds for your employees or recipients of your W-2 1099s may be delayed or possibly denied if we do not receive the information returns. Wisconsin is the first state to conduct employee wage matching against what has been reported by the employer or payer. If the recipient files an income tax return claiming withholding tax on a W-2 or 1099, but we don't receive that same W-2 or 1099 from you, the payer, that amount may not be allowed or at least delayed until we receive your copy.
Here are a few more filing tips for W-2s and 1099s. A valid 15-digit Wisconsin tax account number is required in box 15 of the W-2, in box 17 of the 1099 miscellaneous, and box 6 of the 1099 NEC. For 1099s only, use your Wisconsin withholding tax account number even if your account has been ceased. The account number will help the 1099s get associated to your account without delay. Only if you have had no withholding account ever registered do you use the generic Wisconsin tax account number of 036 88 88 88 88 88 01. However, we do offer a free submission of wage statements on my tax account, which we will go over in a few minutes. We no longer accept PDF files created through the SSA. Now we're going to touch on some My Tax Account filing tips. The first being our standalone entry option for W-2s and 1099s. When you log into My Tax Account, you can click on the More tab on the top of your screen. Then under the section titled W-2 1099 Submissions, you'll see a link titled Enter W-2 1099 Information. This is an option to enter your wage or information returns as a standalone submission, meaning you are not filing a W-7 with you are not filing a W-7 return with it. This could mean you have already filed the W-7 return, or you may not have a filing requirement but still need to submit information returns such as 1099s. An example would be a farmer who is not required to withhold taxes but still logs into My Tax Account to submit the 1099. Once you click on Enter W-2 1099 Information, you will follow the steps to submit your information. It will start out asking you to enter the tax year and then whether or not you are entering corrected W-2s or 1099s. Then, for example, if you enter tax year 2022 and click Next, you will come to this next picture. You'll notice it's asking for a W-2 information first. Entering the information returns follows the same lines as the W-7 return, meaning it starts out asking for W-2 information, which you can do by clicking the plus Add W-2s link circled here. Then once you are done entering the W-2s, or if you do not have W-2s to enter, click on the Next button, also circled here, to move on to 1099s. Then you simply repeat this process until you get to the end and all your info returns have been entered.
When entering your W-2s, make sure that you put the correct Social Security number for the individual. There is a lot of checking going on in the background, and if that information is not correct, it can certainly delay things and may cause issues or penalties as well. Once you're done entering all your information, it will display a summary page for you to review. After you click Confirm and Submit, you would then receive a confirmation number. Now that we've shown you how to do the standalone submission for W-2s and 1099s, let's go over filing your W-7. When you log into My Tax Account and click into your withholding account, you'll be brought to this screen here. It will default to the Periods tab, which you can see at the top of this picture. In order to file your W-7, you can click on the File W-7 Return link for the appropriate tax year. As you can see in this example, there is no File W-7 Return link next to the period of January 1st, 2021, because that return has already been filed. but there is a link next to January 1st, 2022. Once you click on File W-7 Return, this will be the first screen you see. It first asks if you have any W-2s or 1099s to submit. If you have any W-2s or 1099s to report, even if they're getting submitted by some other format like file transfer, you still need to answer this as yes. Once you click yes, it will ask how you intend to submit that information. Then you'll select one of the options, which will be My Tax Account, File Transfer, or Paper if applicable, because remember you can only file by paper with less than 10. Then you click Next and follow the instructions to complete the rest of the W-7 return. When completed, you would receive a confirmation number. Now we've gone over the W-7 return, let's go over the filing the W-6. W-6s can be filed at any time as long as you submit at least one within each filing period by the due date. It is possible to file multiple W-6s within a filing period. There is no limit. You simply click on File W-6 Return. Pictured here is the same picture used in a previous slide when showing you where to find the W-7. You'll see both W-6 and W-7 returns are located on the same page.
Once you click on File W-6 Return, it will bring you to the screen. It will start out asking you if you are filing 0. If you are, click Yes next to that question, and then click Next down below to get your confirmation number. If you have an amount to report, you'll enter the amount in the required space listed here. Lastly, it will ask you if you want to make a payment. If you are not making your payment, click No, and then click Next to get your confirmation number. If you are making a payment, the box is already defaulted to yes, so simply click Next. At the next screen, you'll enter your payment method along with any banking information needed. Then you'll get a confirmation number after you submit your payment. Something to keep in mind, you are required to file a return even if you have no liability to report. As long as you have an active withholding account, you must file at least one W-6 for each period. I also want to point out the notes listed at the bottom of the screen. The first note is informing you that the payment must be submitted before 4 p.m. on the due date to be considered a timely payment. Any payments submitted after 4 p.m. will not be processed until the following night. The second note is giving you the information your bank may need if you have fraud protection. Your bank will need this originator number to allow the payment to be released. There are different originator numbers depending on the tax type you're submitting, but the correct one will always be listed here. Finally, the last note is advising that the payment cannot be funded by a bank outside the United States.
Next, we want to show you how to view a summary of your filing history. To view your summary, we go back to the withholding page in My Tax Account. Remember a few slides back, we mentioned that the system automatically defaults to the Periods tab when you go into your withholding account. In order to view the summary, you'll need to click on the Returns tab, which we highlighted in this picture. As you can see, it lists returns that need to be filed, as well as returns that can be viewed or amended. For example, if you look at September 2022 period, it's listed twice. This is because there has been a return filed, which is why you see View or Amend Return. And since you can file multiple W-6 returns within one period, that's why a File Now link is also available. If you need to amend a W-6, you can always amend the return down if you over-report it. If you need to report additional tax, you just simply file another W-6. Since you can submit as many W-6 returns as you wish, there's no need to amend a return up. For example, if you're on a monthly filing frequency, but you want to submit a W-6 for each weekly payroll that you issue, you can file a W-6 each week instead of waiting until the end of the month to file the entire amount. Just be sure you're selecting the correct pay period each time you file. Now that we've gone over some filing tips, we want to cover some of the common mistakes we tend to see. The first one is common when businesses report wage attachments as withholding tax. A wage attachment is a collection action taken within our compliance bureau that directs employers to withhold a certain amount of an employee's wages and remit that to the department. Wage attachments should not be reported on the W-T6 or the W-T7 because it's not a tax that you're submitting, it's a garnishment. There's another area within my tax account where you would submit any wage attachment payments you have to report. Another common mistake we see when businesses report the federal withholding taxes or unemployment amounts as the Wisconsin state withholding. Neither of these should be reported to Wisconsin on the withholding tax returns. The last one is not necessarily a mistake, but can delay the processing of your W-T7. If you submit your December W-T6 payment on the same day you submit your annual W-T7 return, it could delay the processing of your W-T7. The reason for this is because the W-T6 payment needs to clear your financial institution before it will apply to your account. Now, although this is not a requirement, we do highly recommend submitting the final W-T6 as soon as possible or before you submit the W-T7 so that both can process through correctly.
One of our goals is to make filing tax and paying as simple and fair as possible. We want you to file and pay on time to avoid any interest or penalty. A way to accomplish this is to timely register for a withholding tax account before you start withholding taxes. If you do not register for an account, we will figure that out based on the W-2s your employees submit with their income tax returns. Then we will create a withholding account for you. This will result in late filing fees, penalties, and interest that could have been avoided if you had applied for and filed your tax returns throughout the year. For example, let's say you hire a Wisconsin employee and do not register for a withholding account. That employee files their income tax return along with a W-2 claiming $2,000 of withholding tax. Based on this information, we would set up a withholding account for your business, putting you at a quarterly filing frequency based on the amount of withholding. This would make all 4 quarterly W-T6 returns overdue, as well as the annual W-T7 return. That's 5 periods that you would be assessed late filing fees, penalties, and interest, none of which would have been assessed if you had applied for a withholding account and filed your returns at the time the tax was collected. Now, if you do try to register using your federal employer identification number and you get an error regarding that EIN, give us a call about that error. Sometimes we see businesses change one of the numbers of their EIN to make the application go through. This will cause issues when your W-2s get compared to your EIN at the end of the year. If you get an error when filling out the registration, chances are your EIN is already in our system and you may have simply checked the wrong box on the application. As I mentioned earlier, the W-T7 is a reconciliation of what you reported throughout the year on your W-T6 returns. If the W-T7 doesn't match what you've been reported throughout the year, meaning you underreported on your W-T6 returns, then an incomplete or incorrect return penalty may be assessed. And again, be sure you submit all your W-2s or 1099s with your W-T7 to avoid that $10 penalty for each missing W-2 or 1099. Lastly, if you do not file a required return, the Department of Revenue will assess an estimate and send out a notice of estimated tax letter. So it is important that you file the return, which is the best way to take care of an estimate.
Here at the Department of Revenue, we do verify filing frequencies on an annual basis to determine if your frequency should change. This review happens every November. However, you can verify your frequency at any time on our website. This QR code here will take you to our My Tax Account page where you can click on Search Account Number / Filing Frequency. We review the amount of withholding that you have been reporting to see if your frequency now falls within a different threshold. If we determine it has, then we'd send you a letter in November letting you know what your new filing frequency will be. It would then take place January 1st of that following year. If you receive one of these letters, make sure you communicate this with your payroll service provider so the software can be updated with your new filing frequency. Payroll service providers at this time do not receive a copy of this letter. When closing a business, you'll need to make sure you file your W-T6 returns through the inactivation date. And you should issue W-2s to your employees. You'll also need to file your final W-T7 return within 30 days of your inactivation date. If you do not file that final W-T7 return, an estimate will be assessed. If you do need to inactivate your account, you can contact us and let us know you're closing. Otherwise, you can inactivate the account yourself on My Tax Account as long as you have access.
Listed here are some available resources for you. Our Customer Service Bureau offers a webinar for the annual My Tax Account filers, which you can find on our website. And there are videos on the My Tax Account pages to assist you in filing and paying your taxes. We also offer publications available on our website, which are listed here. The common ones for withholding tax would be Publication 166 and Publication 117.
Once again, my name is Kelly Neeson. Here is my contact information if you have questions. We do hope this webinar has provided you with some useful information. If you have specific account questions, you can also contact our Customer Service Bureau using the email or phone number listed here. So now what I'll do is I will go ahead and I'm going to take a look over some of the questions that came through the webinar and just kind of repeat some to you in case some of you had some of the same questions. Let's see here. So if somebody lives outside of Wisconsin and works outside of Wisconsin for a Wisconsin business, should Wisconsin taxes be withheld? So there isn't any requirement to withhold Wisconsin income tax in this situation because it's based on the employee's residence and where the work is being performed. And so from this question, although it may be they live outside of Wisconsin and they work outside of Wisconsin, there's no association that they're not doing the work in Wisconsin. So that's not the employer's legal state association. Another question was whether Wisconsin has reciprocity agreement with Indiana. Yes, we do. And if you do want to know the reciprocity, that in our publication 166, it does list the states that we do have reciprocity. Do we need to file and upload the W-3s? We do not need copies of those W-3s. The 10 or less count for paper returns is a separate count each for W-2s and 1099s. Yes. So, and I think we went over that, but if you have less than 10 W-2s, you can submit them by paper. If you also have less than 10 1099s, you can submit those by paper. So it's not a total count together. It's each separate information return. But we still do highly recommend you file them electronically. That is the safer bet. Okay, let's see. We need to report 3 1099s this year. We do a file transfer for our W-2s. Our software is not able to provide us a format for the 1099. How do we report that we will file the 1099 separate from a file transfer on the W-T7? Those can be submitted through My Tax Account. You would still report them on your W-T7. if they have withholding. If they do not have withholding, you'd still want to submit those to us, and you can file those still on my tax account. But if they don't have Wisconsin withholding, they do not have to be reported on the W-2/7 return. So if your software is not able to provide you the format for 1099, submitting them through my tax account in our what we call the standalone would be a good option. Are you, as you are filing your W-2/7 and say yes to filing W-2s, is there anywhere else you need to upload or submit W-2s for Wisconsin? You only need to submit W-2s once. You can use any of our approved methods for my tax account at XML file transfer. There is no, if you submit them, for example, if you submit them through my tax account, you do not also have to go and send them by paper or do a file upload. We only need them once. Does Wisconsin have reciprocity with Illinois? Yes, that is another state that we do have reciprocity with. Is there a way to get an annual printout of the W-2/6 payments that have been made? I want to be able to tie all my payments out to the W-2/7 amount. We do not provide printouts, but having access to my tax account online, you are able to view all of your past returns and payments through my tax account. There is also, if you are filing through my tax account on the W-2/7, forgive me, I don't recall which line it is, but there is a link that will show you the amount that you have reported for that year. But we do highly recommend that you check your payroll to confirm the amount that should be reported on the W-2/7. Don't just rely on the W-2/6 amounts you've reported. What are the menu option steps needed to see the withholding payments made during 2022? I use the MTA payments to reconcile quarterly payments. It looks like that's kind of the same question. If you're using my tax account, the easiest would be to select the withholding account. And then by selecting the W-2/6 withholding periods, you can review the amount of tax that was reported. But like I said, on the W-2/7 return itself, there should be a link that would show you the entire year. If we file the W-2/6 payment early in the month, but do not have the payment come out until the 30th, and then file the W-2/7 on the 31st, will that be okay? Yes, you can file the W-2/6 with a future payment date and then file the W-2/7 later. That is okay. Should the W-2/7 be filed before the W-2s? It's not required to file the W-2/7 before the W-2s as long as you're submitting both of them. So if you were to go in and submit your W-2s, it doesn't mean you now cannot submit your W-2/7. As long as you're filing both of them, there's no requirement as to which one has to be submitted first. But you do want to make sure they're submitted by January 31st of the following year. Will we be able to go back and watch this again? Yes. So shortly after this webinar, there will be a recording that will be posted on our website for you to review or recommend to others. And I appreciate it if you did find it useful to actually recommend these to others. Can a W-2 be printed from the My Tax account to send to our employees? No, it cannot. You're not able to print W-2s to mail employees from My Tax accounts. You're able to view what you've submitted, but we do not allow that option to be able to print it and use that as an official W-2. If Wisconsin withholding is paid electronically by QuickBooks, do I answer no to the W-2/6 payment question? Whether done through another party or yourself, they are still W-2/6 payments made for your business. So if you have QuickBooks submitting the payments, you do not have to then go in and file a W-2/6 yourself. In fact, if you did that, it would likely cause duplicate liability. So as long as it's being reported either by you or QuickBooks, just the one time is fine. When will the 2023 withholding tax rates be available? They are currently out there. There was no changes this year for the tax rates, for withholding tax rates. You can view them in publication 166 on our website. Is uploading a file the same as a file transfer when filing W-2s on my tax account? It is different. If you file on my tax account, the W-2s, you're manually entering those. So if you want to file through W-2s, you are manually keying in each W-2, whereas on our website, it's just simply a file transfer. But we don't allow a file transfer through my tax account. You have to go to our website for that. The IRS recently announced that they are not changing the threshold for 1099-Ks until 2023. Is Wisconsin following that delay? Yes, you are correct. Only if there is withholding does Wisconsin require the filing of 1099-Ks different than the IRS. And does Wisconsin have reciprocity with Michigan? Yes, that is another state that we do have reciprocity with. All right, that looks like that was all the questions I see up until this point. So again, here's our contact information. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. I do thank you for attending the webinar tonight, and I hope that you all have a wonderful day.